Welcome, and thank you for tuning into the second episode of this build. Today, we build the diorama for our Tiger I tank, a small scene that portrays the brutal war in the wintry USSR, exaggerated for dramatic effect. We'll capture the essence of the harsh environment, the relentless battles, and the resilience of the soldiers as they maneuver through the icy terrain. Stay with us as we bring history to life, one meticulous detail at a time. For the industrial ruins, we are using a kit from RT-Diorama, crafted from high-quality plaster. These pieces are intricately detailed, providing an authentic backdrop for our scene. First, we carefully spray each individual piece with a primer, ensuring an even coat that will help the subsequent layers of paint adhere more effectively. Next, we apply a white paint from above, creating a striking interplay of light and shadow on the individual bricks. This technique highlights the texture and depth of the ruins, adding a sense of realism to our diorama. Now, some of the bricks are painted in various colors. This serves as an additional layer of pre-shading, allowing us to create different shades of red later on. This step adds diversity and richness to the brickwork, enhancing the overall authenticity of our industrial ruins. A thinned red tone is applied with the airbrush. We aim to preserve some of the pre-shading, not too much, but not too little either. In the upper third of the facades, a slightly lighter red tone is used. This gradient effect simulates natural weathering and adds visual interest to the structure. On the backside, an acrylic paste is dabbed on. This adds an extra layer of texture, even though the plaster is already textured. It enhances the surface, giving it a more rugged and realistic appearance. Once the paste has dried, various shades of grey are sprayed on. Additionally, the chipping technique can be used to create an attractive stone effect, adding to the overall aged and weathered look of the ruins. One of the drawbacks of the materials used by RT-Diorama is that they can break quite easily if dropped, as we can unfortunately see with this piece. A bit of epoxy glue can help fix it back together. Afterward, the open areas need to be filled with putty to restore the surface. And then we can start weathering the facade. We begin with a wash, which can be removed with a sponge after about 40 minutes. However, before applying the wash, the model should be protected with a coat of glossy varnish. Between the bricks, we often see the mortar that holds them together. We simulate this with a mix of various pigments, combined with some airbrush thinner and pigment fixer. This mixture is carefully applied to achieve a realistic mortar effect, adding further depth and detail to our diorama. After drying for a day, the mixture can be removed with water and cotton swabs, leaving it only between the bricks. A bit of force is needed to loosen the pigments, but care must be taken to avoid removing the underlying paint. Glossy varnish helps protect our previous work from the upcoming sectional wash and oil paints. This layer ensures that our detailed weathering remains intact while we add further effects. Let's turn our attention to the base plate. It may not require as much attention, as most of it will eventually be covered in snow. However, we still need to apply an appealing paint job here and there, as some parts will remain visible. Once again, we use the chipping technique to paint the cobblestones. This adds a worn and weathered appearance, enhancing the overall look of the base plate. Most stones are painted in various shades of grey using a brush. As before, a wash is applied here as well. Due to the texture of the stones, the sponge must be dipped in some odorless thinner when removing the wash, as it won't come off otherwise. This ensures the wash settles into the crevices while maintaining the desired look on the surface. The wooden base for this diorama is slightly larger than the main base. To cover the remaining area, foam is cut to fit into the gaps. This also gives us the opportunity to add a few extra details to our diorama. Acrylic paste is applied to the foam, which can be spread with a spatula. A stiff brush helps create a texture resembling wet mud, exaggerated for dramatic effect. This adds a dynamic and realistic element to the surrounding terrain of our diorama. Before we continue, a quick side note. Currently, there's a poll on my channel to decide which build I should tackle next. Please click on the Community tab and cast your vote. You'll find a brief description of each potential build. Your opinion means a lot to me. And if you enjoy my channel, please subscribe and activate notifications. Thank you very much. But now, let's continue with the build. Next, we prepare some small parts that fit the industrial ruins. If you've ever been to an industrial site, you'll quickly notice the abundance of pipes. These are essential for our diorama. First, we trim the rather thick plastic pipes. Using pliers, we can crush and bend them to create a more dramatic and exaggerated effect. The pliers have left gaps in the plastic. These are first sanded down and then filled with putty. This process ensures a smooth and realistic appearance for our damaged pipes. For the painting, I use the Ammo MIG U-Rust solution set. This consists of a paste and 2 different activators, which can be applied with either a brush or a spray bottle. By using both activators, real rust is created. I made a separate video about this some time ago, which you can watch by clicking the info card in the top right corner. And here is the result. Quite impressive, isn't it? The rust effect adds an authentic touch to our industrial ruins, making the scene come to life. After assembling the cable reels, a primer is applied. Additionally, similar to the bricks at the beginning of the video, I spray the top part with a lighter color. This technique highlights the details and adds depth to the reels. An airbrush stencil with wood grain patterns is used to spray the various wooden beams. The goal is not to completely cover the wood, but to create a type of pre-shading. After that, oil paint in suitable wood tones is applied, which is then directly removed with a flat brush, allowing the grain pattern to reappear through the pre-shading. After the oil paint has dried for a few days, it is protected with a coat of glossy varnish. Then, 2 layers of chipping fluid are applied, which dry for 30 minutes before applying a blue acrylic paint. Once this has dried for another 30 minutes, a stiff brush dipped in water can be used to remove some of the paint. This creates small chips in the paint, adding to the weathered and aged look of the wooden beams, making them appear as though they have endured years of harsh conditions. This set also comes with some laser-cut parts, including windows. We carefully trim them to give them a broken, shattered appearance, enhancing the overall sense of chaos and abandonment in our scene. After spraying the paint, it's time to craft some broken glass panes. For this, I use phone screen protectors. Using a scriber, I first punch a few holes, then the glass can be easily broken by hand. The individual pieces of glass can then be peeled off the separating film. However, please be cautious if you attempt this at home. Small glass shards can quickly become projectiles. Always wear safety glasses and gloves to avoid injury. To give the individual glass shards a bit of color, after all, they shouldn't look new in a ruined industrial setting, I use yellowish oil paints and various pigments. This adds an aged, grimy appearance, making them look as though they've been neglected and weathered for years. They can now be carefully attached with a bit of superglue. This secures the shards in place, adding a final touch of realism to our industrial ruin. Now it's time to assemble the individual parts and place them in their final positions. The rather heavy plaster pieces representing the house walls can be secured with epoxy glue. This glue sets very quickly and provides a very stable hold. Some cables made from lead wire are added here and there, draped haphazardly to enhance the scene's sense of disarray and abandonment. These details contribute to the overall impression of an industrial site left in ruin, with wires hanging loosely and adding to the chaotic atmosphere. Finally, we come to one of the highlights of today's build, the snow. Realistically depicting snow is no easy task. For this, I use various products from AK Interactive. The base is the acrylic paste snow terrain, which can be applied with a spatula or a brush. This paste is very white, just like snow. However, on its own, it wouldn't achieve the desired effect. More on that later. The real deal are the so-called snow microballons from AK Interactive. This is a very fine white powder that is sprinkled over the still wet acrylic paste. This powder creates a wonderfully realistic snow effect, transforming our scene into a breathtaking winter wonderland. Now the Tiger 1 tank can be placed, fitting perfectly between the gap in the two walls of the industrial ruin. Want to see how I built the iconic Tiger? Then please click on the info card in the top right corner. The slightly less dense snow, which I apply to the cobblestones, is created from a mixture of snow terrain, snow sprinkles, both products from AK Interactive, still water from Vallejo, and a few drops of glossy varnish. This snow is less dense but creates an extremely realistic ice effect at the edges. I also used this mixture to cover individual objects, such as the windowsills. Microballons are again sprinkled over this mixture, adding the finishing touch to the realistic snowy scene. Oh yes, a few Wehrmacht soldiers are of course essential. As you have just seen, they are now being placed in the scene. And here it is, the final result. What do you think? Do you like it? Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep creating those mini masterpieces.